My name is Amy Scott. I'm with the Bethel Area Nonprofit Collaborative, and we're hosting this public forum tonight. And thank you to all candidates for coming out as well. So I'm just going to give you an overview of how this is going to go, and then we'll jump right into our agenda. I do want to mention that What TV, our local Western Hills Access TV, is recording the forum, and maybe later Brooks can tell us how we'll be able to access it. Besides the channel, I believe there will be an internet link for anyone who wasn't here or if you wanted to watch it again. It's a service that What TV has been offering and continuing to build their offerings to be able to record a lot of the public events in the channel. So Bank, the Bethel Area Nonprofit Collaborative, saw this as a great opportunity to begin hosting public forums for interests in the community. So the fact that the whole election process for the school board has changed just seemed like a great time to say, hey, let's start with holding forums like this so that we can begin to set a precedent that it's great to have an exchange with the community and find out who wants to run for the school board and what their interests are and what's motivating them to be a part of it. Since voters from all 4 towns will now be able to vote for all of the school board seats, this seemed like a great way to learn who all of the candidates are, besides just the ones in the town that you reside in. I do have some details for anyone who's interested in how the new election process is working. There's now one streamlined system for all the towns, for all the candidates who want to run. There's a process for taking out papers and for getting signatures by a certain date, and I have all those details for anyone who would like them. There is also an opportunity for write-in candidates, and that has its own set of rules, and we do have one write-in candidate here tonight. So anyone who wants that, later we can get into the details. So we're going to start, before we jump to the next piece, I also want to mention that I don't see any other kids here, but Music Kids Association is here, and kids can head down the hall to the MK room, and they provided that free of charge for us tonight, which is great. And also, if anyone has questions at any time that they want to pose to the candidates, go ahead and write them on the cards. There's more on the table. And if you just raise it up, Kat, who's in the back there, can come grab it from you and pass it up to me when the time comes for questions and answers. So we're going to start with Dr. Murphy. I asked him to come here and give a very brief overview of what the school board is, what it's responsible for, what it's not responsible for. So he's going to give that overview, and then we'll move from that into hearing from each of the candidates, and then into questions.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on such a great night, especially after a tough Saturday and Sunday. It's nice to know that you're here and you care about this process. As Amy said, my name is Dave Murphy. I'm Superintendent of Schools in SAD 44, and Amy asked me to come this evening to provide an overview of the election process and also to talk a little bit about the roles and responsibilities of becoming a school board member. I was appreciative of the offer to come, and I applaud Bank for hosting this event. I think it gives folks an opportunity to hear a little bit from each of the candidates. Just as a bit of personal background, I was fortunate to have served on the school board myself for 10 years before moving here in 1984. Since that time, I am now completing my 34th year in the district. I served 17 years as elementary principal for all of the different elementary schools. 1 year, 6th through 12th principal at Telstar, and I'm finishing up my 16th year as superintendent of schools. Prior to that time, I had another 10 years in education, so I'm finishing up my 44th year in education. I will tell you that during those 44 years, I've had the opportunity to work with some great board members. And I've always found the people who are the best board members are the people who come on with a positive and constructive attitude, who want to work to improve things on behalf of kids. So I'm hopeful that as we move forward, we'll be able to continue to attract folks like that to serve on the school board. Very important role. I applaud everybody who's here tonight for their willingness to run for a seat in this coming election. I plan to focus quickly on just two topics tonight, the election process and how that's changed, and just what it means to be a school board member. For the first 50 years that the school district was in place, the board used weighted voting in order to make decisions about school board issues. The weighted vote for each director was determined based on an annual, a review of the census every 10 years. And typically what ended up happening is the amount of votes that each director had changed a little bit depending on the residency, the amount of residents in each town. This calculation really just ended up tweaking the number of votes that each director had as opposed to the number of board members. So it didn't change the overall number of board members who represented each of the towns. Over the past several years, as you know, the question of Newry's withdrawal from the district has come up, and one of the things that was of concern to folks in that town was the amount of representation that they felt they had on the board versus the percentage of funding that they were asked to contribute based on the fact that our district allocates or charges the individual towns based on valuation. Working with our attorneys, we were able to figure out a way to move from what had traditionally been the one-person, one-vote system that we've had in place for 50 years to a different process that could be, it was really kind of based on the New York Borough election system, which looked at-large candidates and gave folks the opportunity to vote on all board members. As a result of that, the board decided that they would put together a reapportionment committee to look at that possibility. That committee met. It consisted of 12 members, 3 from each of the 4 towns, 1 board member, and then 2 people who were appointed by the selectmen. They eventually made a decision that they would add a 3rd representative from Newry, giving Newry, Woodstock, and Greenwood 3 board members each, and continuing to have Bethel have 6 board members because of the difference in size. Everybody on that committee agreed with that approach. That approach actually went to the board. I won't say everybody agreed to it. It might have been 1 or 2 people who voted in a different way. But the other recommendation that they also made was that as of July 1, voting would shift from weighted voting to every director having 1 vote. So beginning on July 1st, there'll be 15 school board members, 3 from Newry, Greenwood, and Woodstock, and 6 from Bethel. Each of them will have 1 vote. In effect, that decision changed the amount of representation that Newry had from 6% to 20%. And that proposal was forwarded to the Commissioner of Education, Robert Hassan, who approved that recommendation earlier this year. The change also included a change in the method used to elect school board members, as Amy said. Beginning this year for the first time, board members will run as at-large candidates, meaning that voters from all 4 towns will have the opportunity to weigh in and cast ballots for all candidates running for the school board. This replaces the weighted vote system, this replaces the system where individual towns elect their own representatives to the school board. Although writing candidates are still possible, in order to be to get a seat through a write-in process, the successful candidate would have to have at least 25 votes from across the district. Terms are staggered. It's supposed to be every 3 years, unless someone happens to resign in the middle of the term. And we have 1 position in Greenwood this year that will be a 1-year term, finishing out a term of a director who resigned a couple of years ago. Earlier this year, we had a meeting to discuss all of these changes with the different prospective board members. We had a good turnout for that meeting. I'll give you the condensed version. This is the smaller size packet of the information that we had to review to talk about the different changes that were made in the process that folks had to go through. So given the shift from something that we've been doing for 50 years to something new, I have to say that the process has gone extremely well. And to this point, it seems to be working very effectively. So on June 12th, you'll have the opportunity to weigh in and cast your ballots for representatives on the board from all of the towns. The second part is school board expectations. And one of the very first things that we do after a school board member is elected is we have a school board orientation session. We sit down and we review pertinent policies and expectations and the different obligations that board members are required to act upon. One of the things that we received years ago was a great article by Don Kopp, who was a lawyer for Drummond and Woodson. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's a couple of excerpts that I think are important, because being a school board member is much different than being a representative or being a selectman. People are voting for you, electing you to make decisions based on what you feel is in the best interest of students. It's not a question of going out and feeling like you have to gauge how the community feels or how your voters feel about a certain topic. You know, obviously, you're always going to have that in the back of your mind, but your board, your community members are electing you because they feel that you're the person who can make that decision in the best interest of kids. Don said that the school committee acts as a public board. In no sense does it represent a town. Its members are chosen by the voters of the towns, but after election, they are public officers deriving their authority from the law and responsible to the state for the good faith and rectitude of their acts. What this means is that a school board is not a representative body like the state legislature or Congress or even your selectmen. Its members are chosen by the voters, but its primary duty is to oversee public education in a manner prescribed by the law and not solely to carry out the actual or perceived will of local voters. School boards were not primarily established to respond to what members of the community asked them to do. While an important aspect of locally elected school board members is guiding their school system in ways that reflect broadly the community values, they're not required to follow the desires of special interests in their communities. The article goes on to talk about a lot of other specific things that board members need to be aware of, and that packet in its entirety is distributed and reviewed with new board members after they're elected. Critical is board members recognizing that there's an amount of time that they're expected to dedicate to the process of being a school board member. Board typically meets 1 or 2 nights during a month, and then if you're on a committee, which everybody is, you may meet monthly with that as well. It varies depending on the individual committee that you happen to be on. But attendance is extremely important. If you're going to be on the board, it's important that you're there. It's important that you commit the time and energy necessary to helping the board operate as a whole. One of the big differences between selectmen and school board members too is that it's really important to realize, as I said before, that you're elected to make decisions. You also only have authority when you're sitting at the table with the other 14 members of the school board. As an individual, you have no authority outside the realm of the actual school board meeting. So it's a real team effort. People have to work well with each other. Typically, they can argue until the cows come home. Once an agreement is made, it's the expectation that folks will kind of get behind that and make it happen. Also, obviously, you have to be good stewards of public money. One of the things that I would just mention to you that, again, board members would know, is that our budget on the whole for the last 12 years has gone up a little bit less than 1% per year, in spite of other rising costs that I suspect most town budgets and community budgets exceed. Other things that board members will find when they first get elected is we'll sit down and we'll review pertinent policies. If you were to go on to the school board website or the SAD 44 website and go to policies, there's a whole section, Section B, which talks about policies that are pertinent to school board members. And we'll sit down and we'll go through those with all the newly elected board members. So again, I want to thank you tonight for coming out. I really want to thank folks for indicating their interest in representing students of the district on this board. It's a very important role to play. Thank you. Thanks again. Thanks. Good luck.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that overview of the process and of the board itself. So we're going to move right into hearing from each of the candidates. I've asked them to each just share briefly who they are and what they're interested in and why they're running for the seat. And we're just going to go through one at a time. And again, we'll have questions until after we've heard from all of them. Then we can begin to ask them individual questions. So we don't need to go in any particular order. So if anyone wants to volunteer to go first, please do.
I'll get it over with.
Okay, great, thanks.
I'm Martha McLean. I'm running for the 3-year term in Greenwood. I'm an attorney now, but I used to be a high school teacher. I taught at Oxford Hills Comprehensive High School for 12 years. I loved teaching and I had a great rapport with the kids and it was a great job, but I turned 40 and I wanted to change, so I got a law degree and now I have a law firm on Main Street in Norway. I actually also taught at Gould for a year, so I feel like I have a good broad understanding because I've been at Oxford Hills and Gould and my kids go to Telstar. And I've been a teacher. I'm running because I think I can make a difference and I want to contribute to the community at large. I have 2 kids at Telstar. I've had a really good experience in SID 44 at the Woodstock School in particular, Telstar Middle School. Mark Kenny's here, he was a phenomenal principal, and so far I'm having a very good experience at the high school. I know the school's not perfect, but I believe in finding common sense solutions to problems, and I think I'm pretty good at that. And I also think that most problems have solutions. I deal with problems all the time as an attorney, and you just have to buckle down and find a way through it, and I think I'm pretty good at that. And I'm going into this with a very open mind. People have told me that I need to have a platform. I don't have a platform. I'm just here to go to meetings, find out what the problems are, discuss them, come up with solutions, and always operate in the best interest of the kids. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm glad you don't have a platform. I don't have a platform either. My name is Erin Mitchell. I am running for the one vacant seat that is a write-in candidate for Greenwood. I live in Greenwood. My son and I moved here 2 years ago. He's at Telstar Middle, loves it, is very excited for the Freshman Academy next year. I have a background, my way background is in teaching elementary education, and I have a master's degree in deaf education. I have a passion for lifelong learners and fostering that in children and the community. So that's why I thought I would jump on board here. So thanks.
I'm Cheryl Morgan, and I am on the school board now for the town of Woodstock. It all started, the first time it started was when my girls became students at Woodstock, and I, as a parent, decided that maybe I should get on the board and see what's going on. So I did, and I was on for 13 years. Then I decided it was time for someone else to take over, so I stepped down for a while. But because I love children, and I'm very interested in what their education and everything, I became a volunteer. I became a PTA member of Woodstock. I was volunteering at Woodstock, then I went up to the middle school, and then I had teachers and parents saying, get back on the board, get back on the board, we want you on the board. So therefore, I've been on for 9 years this time. And why I'm taking, I guess I want to take another term is because I just got on the education, and I am very, very much interested in the education, so I'd like to continue that. So that is why.
Thank you.
My name's Danny Whitney, and I'm running for the Bethel seat. I own a landscaping company in Bethel. I was born and raised in Bethel. I've lived here for 24 years. I graduated from Telstar in 2012, so fairly recently, and I think that's a perspective that can be beneficial to the board. I think when I was in school, I didn't know a lot of the board members. A lot of them weren't from the area. A lot of them didn't graduate from the school. And I think having the perspective of a recent graduate is something that can benefit the students a lot. Knowing that you're in it for them. You're not necessarily doing it for another reason or to make Telstar or Bethel like another school. Because I think each town is unique, and Telstar and Bethel being a small town, it's Crescent Park, Woodstock. You don't necessarily need to change it or make it like another place. You just need to succeed in what you do, and I think that's important. And other than that, like these guys said, no real agenda, just on to learn and interested in trying to better the community.
I'm Kelly Scott. I'm running for the 3-year term from Newry. A little bit about myself. I've lived in this community for about 15 years. most recently moving to Newry in September of last year. I've worked for the town of Newry for almost 4 years as a deputy town clerk. Prior to that, I worked in the banking industry for about 17 years. I have an 8-year-old son who attends Crescent Park. I volunteer for our local snowmobile club, and my husband and I coach a rookie baseball team for Bethel Rec. I was appointed to the school board in November of 2017 as the new 3rd member from Newry. When the opportunity came up to add a 3rd director, excuse me, I decided to give it a try, as my term would end in June if I felt that it was a commitment that I couldn't make. My initial reason to want to join the school board was quite simply just to get involved as a parent. I also feel that my experience with municipal government would be beneficial to the board, as budgeting and the rules of order are very similar with the 2 entities. I decided to run for another term, well, because my 6 months really wasn't long enough to get my feet under me. I'm still learning the process and my role. My vision of my role on the school board is that the community finds that I'm approachable and willing to listen. I can't promise that I can fix or change anything by myself, but I like to know what's on people's minds and what's going on in our schools. And my big picture vision for the school board is the hope that the community and educators will see the board as a transparent group of community members that simply just want to work together for the common goal of making this an amazing district full of opportunities. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Decato, and I am a longtime resident of Bethel. Moved back here about 3 years ago with my husband Chris and my 2 daughters to raise our family here. I have a unique perspective in that I'm the daughter of an educator that was an educator here in this district for close to 30 years. My father was a mill worker and a farmer, and just really love this community, and that's why we came back here. Both my daughters, ages 8 and 5, actually are students here at Crescent Park School. I have been a Daisy Girl Scout leader here at the school for the last 3 years. I've also been on the secretary of the Mahoosic Kids Association, which is the after-school program that we have here in this district. By trade, I'm a nurse. I currently work for Androscoggin Home Health Care and Hospice as a clinical liaison. I've been a nurse in the school setting. I've been a nurse in the hospital setting. I've also been a nurse for the state of Maine as a public health nurse. And so I've actually served many of the families here in this district and have been able to firsthand see what some of those strengths and challenges are that exist, not just in the school setting, but at home too. I do have experience working in the budget world. Before I was a nurse, I ran a couple different grants in the Rumford area. I actually started the after-school program in the Rumford area and managed a 6-figure budget. I think that, and I also have one more thing. I also did a lot of policy development too. I just want to throw that out there as well. And why I'm running is because I think it's really pertinent that we have parents of children in the district be on the board, because it's important that we have that voice making some of the decisions, or making all the decisions that affect our children and ultimately our community. And as a graduate of Telstar, you know, I graduated in '94, many years ago, and it was awesome. You know, I'm a product of public school, and I know that there's a lot of different opinions about the high school right now, and I'd like to just continue to be a part of that effort to improve that and make sure that we continue to offer great opportunities for our children. So thank you, and I hope to have your vote on June 12th.
My name is Darcy Lambert. I am a resident of Bethel. I've been on the school board now for a year, and I hope to continue that moving forward. I am the Director of Communications at Sunday River Resort, where I am at least until June 1st. After that, I move into a new role as Vice President of Severe Services. I have 2 young girls who are in the school system. Madison is in kindergarten with Sarah's youngest, and I also have a middle schooler who's in the 6th grade and loving it there. I would say what drove me into my interest in running for the school board initially was just being a parent and wanting to be more involved in the education that my kids would receive while here. I'm also on the PTA for Bethel. I coach lacrosse for the little ones. But I would say in terms of active parent engagement, there's definitely an education that is involved with being a school board member, and I've really valued what I've learned in this past year. The cadence is different. There's a hurry up and wait process to it. A lot of information comes at you fast, and then you're waiting each month or until the next meeting to kind of see the next piece of that action through. And so I feel like I'm finally just getting that cadence now, and I'd love to keep that going. And I'd love seeing more parents, young parents, becoming eager to be on the school board as well, because I think it makes a huge difference. Seeing your kids day to day and knowing what they're going through, and then taking that to the table and helping shape the policies and the decisions and the budget constraints or expenses or additional purchases, what have you. I think all of that's important when you have that perspective. And so, as a parent, I hope to gain your vote again. I ran uncontested the first time, so that was kind of an easy one. But anyway, I'll cut it off there so I can answer some questions.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. So I'm going to start with a couple of these questions, and I would say just go ahead and raise your hand if you want to answer it first, and we'll just see how far we get. So what is your vision for where our schools should be in 5 years, and what steps do you think the school board could take to help the schools get there? So your vision for the future and steps to get there. Anyone want to step in?
Well, I had kind of spoken a little bit about the high school, and a couple of the great programs that we used to have was Outdoor Skills Leadership Program, OSLC. We also had a sophomore collaboration, I believe it was with Outward Bound, which was similar to what Gould Academy does with their Junior 4-Point program. So I'd love to see, and I know budget constraints, programs get cut. I would love to see, as a board member, the use of our community partnerships and community networking opportunities that we have already be brought to the table to maybe look at reinstating some of those programs or other programs that are similar to that allow for learning in all different areas.
Anyone else? Martha?
I would just like the school to feel more positive. I feel like sometimes Telstar in particular, the high school, sort of seems to suffer from a lack of self-esteem or something. It's like, it's not a bad place, but you so rarely hear good things about it on the street. And I think how to get there in part, is just a guess, is just sometimes I feel like there's a lack of listening, like there's poor communication. I mean, obviously people care about the district. It's like one of the most beautiful nights of the summer, and there's this many people in this room right now. And I think sometimes community members feel like they're not being heard, and maybe the board needs to do a better job of listening, and both sides need to communicate better about how to make the school a better place. I mean, it's just a guess. I really don't know. I'm just a parent in the district, but I would just mostly like to see it be a much more positive attitude about the district, because I think we have a lot going for us, and we have to just sort of harness the good energy and make it better.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to?
I would like to see the skill of mindfulness come into the schools a little more, from the young ones all the way up, because in our culture, in our society right now, everything is immediacy, and there's a lot of pressures, and there's a lot of outside negativity and a lot of kind of craziness going on in the world. And I would like to just be able to give the kids an opportunity to gain some tools to allow themselves to settle and continue to go on and grow.
Go ahead, Danny.
I would kind of echo what Sarah was saying with the community relationships, and I'd also add that one of the programs that was kind of starting to die out when I was graduating was the School to Work program. And I think that reinstating that and building it and building relationships with employers in the area is beneficial to not only the area but the students as well. And I think you accomplish that by, like Sarah was saying, going with building the relationship with the community, and then with different businesses and the school itself. So.
Cheryl, then Darcy.
My being on the school board, I know for a fact that we have goals that we set, and a lot of the ones that were mentioned just now are on there, and several of them have started in the works. We still have some of them to do, but I just want you to know that we do have goals that we set, and we definitely try to abide by them.
Darcy?
I would echo that, and I would add to it, I guess my goal or my hope for the school board moving forward is definitely better communication. I think that we have hit a number of goals this past year that the town and parents aren't necessarily aware of, so I would love to see the school board become better at communicating all of those major achievements that all of our schools are doing on a daily, if not, or weekly, if not daily basis. I'll leave it at that.
That's why I'm the only one not to say. I think we're on the right track with a lot of the great things that are happening already. I think if we keep on that, keep that momentum up, the freshman academy, the correlation with the Central Maine Technical College, and again, I agree on the community. I know my son just did, they had the field trip to the Mahoosic Land Trust, and I saw all the pictures of all the people that came from the community and all different aspects of what they do. And I'm fairly certain they donated their time for the day. It was wonderful. I couldn't believe all the different opportunities and the stations they had. And but I personally think we're on the right track. I think if we can keep the momentum up, I think we'll be in good shape in less than 5 years.
Thank you. So a couple of questions about your thoughts about the Newry withdrawal effort and where that stands and what your perspective is on it. There are a couple of different angles in the question. What? Views on the Newry withdrawal effort and where that stands now, and just your general views on what's happened to date and where it might go from here.
I'll give that one a go. Yes, and working in the town office, I've been there since the day the petition came in to start that. As a board of director, obviously, you take an oath to make decisions based on the best interests of the school district. I personally think a withdrawal by Newry would decimate the school district, so obviously, I don't feel good about that. I personally would like to see something end. I'd love to see an end somehow. The best way, I hate to see the tax dollars going towards this. That could be better used to fund programs. And I don't know what the answer is, but that's my hope, is that it comes to a conclusion.
Thank you. Martha?
I think it would have been devastating in many ways if Newry had pulled out, but I also understood where their town was coming from. And full disclosure, I ended up on the committee that drafted the next, the thing that's going to go before the voters for the next go-around. So I learned a little bit more about it during that whole process. So I guess I feel hopeful that the town of Newry feels like they've been heard and respected, and I think now it's going to go to the voters again, and hopefully the voters will be a little more informed about what the whole thing means, because I know as a voter myself, I didn't really totally understand the whole thing, and I actually abstained from voting on that one issue. So hopefully this go around, people will understand it a little better, and it'll pass, and it will end up being behind us.
Anyone else?
Go ahead.
I'm going to echo what you said, because that was the first thought I had when I attended the orientation to become a school board member. One of the things that really resonated in my head is that you're making decisions based on the best interest of the district and of the children. And a withdrawal from the district is not in the best interest of those children without a clear plan in place of what those children are going to do for education. And so I'm glad to see that the collaborative process has occurred, and that there's been, it looks like, a collaboration on both sides to bring it to vote again. At the same time, as a community, we have voted on this twice. But I'm glad to see that, to keep lines of communication open, that we're willing to work together to, as Martha said, make sure people are well informed when they're making that vote the third time.
Danny?
So yeah, I agree with that if Nuri were to withdraw, it would devastate the community. And while students and the teachers and the school is definitely most important in the minds of a school board member, they also need to consider the taxpayers. And I think the town of Bethel and Greenwood and the surrounding towns would not be able to afford any sort of increase that a withdrawal would cause. And I think that that needs to be taken into consideration because they ultimately fund the school and the district, and without them, then there is no district, and there is no way to make it make the school better. So I think any withdrawal would definitely not be good for the district or any of the students.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
No, just that I am a board member, and therefore, like I say, my policy is the students come first. I agree with everyone that it would hurt us badly. And I do feel sorry for the taxpayers there are people in our towns that just cannot afford the taxes that they have now. Say nothing about if they get raised. I mean, we're seeing houses being taken away every day, so, but I do feel that it is going to hurt, but like anything, we'll get back up and survive.
Anyone else? So there's another question about how you might propose to cut administrative costs within the district.
One thing that I would look into immediately would be the office over at the Parkway Plaza. I think with lowering numbers throughout the school system, there's got to be a more efficient and a more cost-efficient way to have the superintendent's office and in a building on the Telstar grounds or Crescent Park, wherever it may be. There has to be a more cost-effective way than what we're doing now. And I think that would be a great starting place. And then I think there's some other administrative costs that could be cut as well, but that would be number one on my list.
Anyone else? Or thoughts about that topic at all, actually, about administrative costs?
Not specific necessarily to administrative costs, it's more to the budget in general. In the year that I've been there and I've been on the finance committee, it's been a lesson in learning how tight that budget is and how many cuts have been made to it year after year after year. Granted, the cost, as we see it as voters, goes up by an incremental percent each year, but you're not necessarily seeing that in programs for students or benefits to students. Like, it's a pretty lean and mean budget right now. So to talk about administrative cuts, I don't know how you do that without really sacrificing the quality of education that you're going to be giving students.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Next question is, what do you feel are the most important skills that all graduates from SAD 44 should have?
I think most important is life skills. Balancing a checkbook, just work ethic, showing up on time. I think that goes far beyond any history lesson or math equation. I think having kids be lifelong learners, but also, like I said, just being respectful, showing up on time, as I mentioned, and any other life skills that they don't teach a lot of. At least when I was there, we had we never learned how to balance a checkbook. We never learned how to cook dinner or do laundry. And I know home ec has kind of gone out of style, I guess, but some of the basic life skills that you need, you don't necessarily have when you graduate. And I think we need to look into that. And like I said, being a lifelong learner.
And I'm going to back up on the life skill piece just a little bit to the elementary level. Kids need to know how to tie their shoes. We need to start there, but then we also do need to, I was fortunate enough to, when I went to Telstar, we still had home ec. And so I learned how to balance a checkbook. I learned how to sew. I learned how to measure for cooking. All those things are really important skills that I can't believe we're graduating students that don't know how to do those things, let alone tie their shoes, because we have Velcro shoes now. But I think that's really important. The other piece that I think is really important that we really can't do without is some of that hands-on learning, similar to what I had when I was in high school, and that's things like graphic arts, woodworking, art. All those things are really important. Not every student can take advantage of the great opportunities we have at Region 9. So where are some of those skills, where are some of those opportunities being presented so that every student can have access to those type of extracurricular elective type courses, which may create a lifelong leisure interest, or it might create a skill that they decide to go into a trade for.
Brenda?
I really like what Danny said. I think life skills are super important. Respect, work ethic, and I think also just knowing that there's a time and a place for everything. Like, it's okay to be a kid sometimes and be wild or swear, but there's other times where that's not appropriate. So just really basic life skills like that. And then the other thing that I would like the district to take care of is figuring out if kids want to go to college or not, and if they want to go to college, get them on that path and counsel them in that direction. If they don't, then make sure that when they leave high school that they're ready to get a job. I know at Oxford Hills, when I was there was a real focus on getting all kids to go to college, and I'm not sure that that is the right reality. I don't think all kids need to go to college, and that I would prefer to just focus on the reality that maybe they don't all need to go to college, and that that's perfectly fine, and just making sure that they're on a track to leave high school with some skills to go get a job. And yeah, that.
Anyone else?
I definitely agree with all of you with the life skills. I think another piece of that is being able to form an opinion and being able to back up your feeling for an opinion, and being able to sit with someone who doesn't have the same opinion and be able to have a conversation with that and open yourself to what other people think, and learning to get along with other people, even if you don't like it. I think that's probably a lot what happens in the freshman academy. I'm hoping, I think so. So, but that's life. I mean, that is a life skill too, with checkbook and cooking and all of those essential pieces.
Anyone else?
I agree to all of it. Yeah, said it great.
I think we all do.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So back to a little bit of a money question. There's one here about whether, what you think about the whole concept of, or possibility of raising taxes in order to put more money into education. We were talking about a very lean budget. What about putting more money in?
I am all for raising a budget within obviously a appropriate level. But if it means more opportunities, more teachers, more programs, more skills, why not? Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think it's always good to have more and to want to better the school, and raising the budget can sometimes do that. But I think first you'd want to look within and see where maybe things in the budget, in the current budget, can be changed or manipulated to be able to do that, to be able to add programs and such within first, make cuts within that don't affect other programs or other situations, and then as a last resort, then that's when you would go to the taxpayers, I think, for the money. But I think you always want to look within first and then go from there.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I like to also see, someone who's worked in the grant world before, what exists for grant opportunities out there before we immediately go and talk about raising people's taxes. Like you had said earlier, I think there's a lot of families that are strapped in our district. And, I think that we're all willing to give a little more of ourselves, whether it be in other ways, not always financial. But I think we should exhaust all other options first.
Anyone else?
Well, I feel that, the reason our budget has stayed the way it has for so many years, and I feel that our students are getting a good education in some places, but also you'll find this because we did apply for a lot of grants, and we've had a lot of grants, and because of those grants, we've been able to educate some of our teachers that are now in the district, plus getting them more, they have the opportunity to become better teachers through these grants and stuff. So I feel that we are, and it's like you say, I would love to see the budget go up for the sake of the school and the students and the district and everything. But there again, I hate to see parents suffer. Not parents, but taxpayers suffer for it and some do. So.
Other responses? Is that?
Well, I just feel an obligation to admit that, yes, I would be open to raising taxes. I think all the same things that people said, I'm not going to just raise taxes, but if there's not enough money to adequately raise our children in our schools, then we would have a discussion about raising taxes. And I think sometimes it's a really small incremental amount. Sometimes it's not as devastating as people make it seem. So full disclosure, yeah, I'd be open to raising taxes. If I could find cuts in other places beforehand, I would do that, but yes, I would be open to that.
Thank you. So this one is about the public pre-K, which started this year at Crescent Park, and about the expansion of that pre-K. So what are your thoughts on the expansion of that program at Crescent Park. Do you think that the expansion could cause strain on existing resources? Require extensive bus rides for those pre-K students? Any opinion about that program and its expansion?
I think it's wonderful, and I know this area has been looking for this school to offer pre-K for many years now. And the expansion of it, I do believe is grant money partially to fund it. So I don't think it will put it. I guess that would be a wait and see for me to see if it's going to put a strain, but I don't think so. I think we have the resources to take care of it. And I think it's just a fabulous opportunity for the younger kids. I wish we had pre-K when my child was young, because we spend an awful lot of money on preschool. So I think it's a great option for the community to have, and I think expansion was much needed and will be very welcome.
I agree completely. I think given that the vast majority of our kids are on free or reduced lunch, free pre-K is a game changer for a lot of families in this area. So I fully support it. I think we have considered what impacts the programs may have on our budget, but the success of starting those little ones as soon as possible and getting them enrolled and into a school, and I think far outweighs any kind of financial impact that the budget may see on our resources.
So I love the idea of all children being able to participate in public pre-K, because the evidence exists that any child that can have the access to public pre-K does that much better as they progress through their post-secondary education. Post-secondary education. So my concern that I have with this, though, is where's it going to go? Where is it going to go? And I think, as a community member, there hasn't been a lot of transparency as to where it's going to go. And as somebody with 2 children at the elementary school, and as somebody who's volunteered in this school on a weekly basis for the last 3 years, just, some transparency as to where those classrooms are going to go and how they're not going to in any way hinder the other classes that are here in the school, that they're not going to hinder the MKA program. There's a lot of chatter going on in the community, and so people just want to know, where's it going to go? Hands down, public pre-K access for all children is a remarkable thing, especially Head Start based, which I'm assuming, is it a Head Start based program, these additional 2 programs?
It is, yes.
So ideally, it would be great. In full disclosure, I used to be a nurse that worked in early care and education for the University of Southern Maine, and ideally, children start public pre-K in the schools that they are going to then be transitioning to kindergarten in, because that is part of why they do so well by starting in a public pre-K program, is because they're starting in their school before they're a kindergartner. So at 3 and 4, they're starting in a public pre-K program that's at their school that they're then going to transition into kindergarten at. So there's great benefit there too. So I guess I have a lot more questions about it, and would love to find out more information as to, maybe why one of those classes aren't going to be offered at the Woodstock area, because I do have some concern as to the length of bus times that those 4-year-olds potentially will have by being bused here at the start of the day and then bused home. And again, I don't have all those answers because I don't know what all those answers are.
And the answers, just so you know, haven't been determined yet. They'll be determined based on the enrollment that we see, interest from the different communities.
Great.
So.
Anyone else?
I just think that, to reiterate what Martha said way back at the beginning, of problems come up, we kind of put our heads together for solutions is a great, I don't know the answer and I don't know a lot about it, but I'm definitely willing to hear sides of it and figure something out.
So this is another question about programs. So this question is more about what to do about there's a lot of talk and interest in expansion of programs or offering new programs, and this question is saying, so what about the core subjects that are not existing right now in the curriculum, and what are your thoughts about what to do about that? So the couple examples here were, for example, foreign language for middle school, coding for elementary age, and there probably are others, so it's more about those core subject areas. Thoughts about that?
I would say right now the board is looking into ways to address all of that. I know that there are committees looking into how to get foreign language into the school, whether it's at the elementary level or at the middle school level. We've been looking into how to use some of the math resources and extend that possibly into coding. I would say that the concerns that are being raised in that question are definitely being addressed at the school board level now. And a way to drive those concerns home even more is to actively come to a meeting, grab the ear of somebody who's on the school board, grab the ear of your teacher or somebody who participates in these monthly meetings, because it is something that is a hot topic for all of us who are on the board. We want to make sure that our programming meets the needs of the students who are attending these schools and exceeding on their expectations. So I would say yes, we're trying to address it little by little. But again, it also goes back to a budget question and how much can we put into a budget to address those concerns.
My being on the education committee, I can definitely agree with her there. We are working on it, and it's not easy, but we are working on it. We've, like the foreign languages and stuff. I hate to use this excuse, but people say, Bethel is way north, and what's going to bring us up there? What have we got up here to come to teach up here or something? So it's kind of hard to find the different, especially language people, but we are working on it. That's one of the things that we've been discussing in the education committee is the foreign language, and like you say, some other courses that we would like to get back in. So it is being addressed, there's no doubt about it.
Anyone else? So there's a question here about the community perception. So, earlier someone was talking about how sometimes there's a lot of negativity about the school or about administration or about any one piece of what's going on. And so this question is about, how do you want to address, or how would you address, or do you have ideas about addressing, lack of confidence in the school, in the administration, in the programs that are happening? And again, it's about your ideas about community perception.
So yeah, I would agree with that there is a lot of negativity. I know even when I was going there, every comment you heard was, where are you going to go to school, or how are you going to get into a school from Telstar? And myself and many others had no problem getting into a college from Telstar. And as long as the students apply themselves, you can still get a very, very high quality education at Telstar. And I think the way you kind of change that perception is by what we were talking about earlier with not everyone has to go to college, and some kids will come out of high school and go right into the workforce, and that's perfectly fine. And then others will go to college, some will go on to get master's degrees or doctors, and both are perfectly fine. I think you need to separate the two, and that's going to start to change the perception in the community that Telstar's a bad, or Crescent Park's bad, or whatever, because when these kids come out, even if they're not going into secondary education, they're still living a quality life, and they can still raise a family, and they still have jobs, and they're still a productive member of society. And I think that should be our ultimate goal as educators.
I have to definitely second what Danny just said, that it's not one track for everyone, and if we can let them know that that's okay, and our community know that that's okay, that not everybody has to follow the same path. And even when I was talking to Caleb when we first got here, and he heard that Telstar High School was way at the bottom, he was like, why do I want to go to school there? And then he heard that it was pretty far at the top, and he's like, oh, I'm going to school there. So it's all a perception of what we kind of celebrate, and I think that it even comes from the community, but it also comes from the staff, really celebrating the staff and their achievements, and like Sharon said, when teachers get grants to better educate themselves, really celebrate that piece of them, so then they bring that into their classroom, and then the kids see that, and everybody's kind of on this little more of a higher ride than the negativity. And negativity is going to come in everywhere. It's just we have to kind of not force feed, but become a more forceful positive. And I think, Danny, you said that so eloquently of there are people in all niches, and if they can, our goal is a productive member of society. I think that's great.
I think communication is key. I think when you talk about community perceptions or misperceptions, I think oftentimes there are things that are misunderstood because either something's been lacking in communication, or something's perceived inaccurately, or it's their personal perception. So I'd like to see improved transparency, and I don't know what that looks like. If the board minutes are available online, do people know where to access them? I can tell you here at the elementary school, it's been amazing this year with the communication levels we've had underneath new leadership. It's been absolutely amazing, and the positive things that have been spoken about in the community about, wow, something as simple as knowing what's for hot lunch tomorrow. And that might seem pretty funny to most of us, but when you have children that are really particular about what they eat, the fact that we know if there's been a change in the mealtime menu, and it makes for a good day or a bad day for some children. And so I think it can be really simple things, but I do think improved communication can make the world of difference when it comes to perceptions.
And just to take that a step further, too, the question also talked about, community's confidence in administration, which includes the board as well. Is there anything more anyone wants to say about that in terms of community confidence?
No, try. I think if I were on the board, I would want to look at what is going well in the district and build on it. And I think a good example is Woodstock School was an incredibly positive experience for my kids and my husband and myself. Like, we never had a complaint about that school. The place was almost magical. Same thing with Crescent Park. Like, I hear very positive things about it. So I think I would look at what is going well in the district and try to emulate it, and just try to keep spreading it up higher. Like the middle school, I already pointed out Mark Kenny, but he's a phenomenal principal. So I would want to look at what he's doing in the middle school and why it's going so well. And then it's just my personal opinion that the perception of the district seems to decline as you get higher up in the grades. It seems like the elementary schools seem to be more pleasing to most parents and community members, and middle schools somewhere in the middle. And then for some reason, something seems to drop off at high school. And my personal approach is to look at what's going well and build on it. And I would also want to deal with the reality that we're in a difficult position for a town this small to try to support 2 schools is tough. We have Gould Academy, and a lot of kids peel off and go there, and it's a drain on the public school system. And I think sometimes, and then some kids peel off and go to Oxford Hills or Hebron, which is, adds further insult to injury. So I think you just have to confront those realities. You got to deal with the hand that you're dealt, and those are all things that are very difficult, and it's about being very real and honest about them and trying to come up with common sense solutions. And I think parents and, well, I think if you have a new board that you can impact that. I think a new board could bring in could bring in some real positivity and change. And I think the way that parents talk about the school matters. Like, whenever I hear my kids complaining at the dinner table, I'm like, you can't talk that way about your school. Like, that's your school. You have to make the best of it. And trying to spread that positive attitude and in the town and in the meetings and in the board meetings and in the newspaper, and like, it's about having a positive attitude. And I think if we can sort of spread that message and focus on what's going well, and when something's not going well, confront it realistically, talk about it, deal with it, and then try to move on, then I think it is possible to make things better.
Can I just add something to Martha said? It just struck me that when Caleb first got here, he had really long hair, and he was wearing one of those bandana things. And he was not allowed to wear it at school, but the girls were. So I said to him, you need to go talk to you need to have a conversation with somebody and tell them your feelings on this. And it just, what Martha just said of giving kids a voice and allowing them to take part in their education, not just being told, what to learn and how to learn, but giving them a voice to make changes in their school is definitely going to give them a sense of community and a sense of safety and a sense of well-being, and take more pride and ownership in their surroundings. He cut his hair, by the way. So it wasn't
Anyone else want to add to that? So we have one more question, unless others want to pass in another question. And this one's very specific. And it's about a possibility of the future if the superintendent became, part-time after retirement. Is this something that you would support or not? It's not on the table right now. It's if this were to happen in the future. What would your thoughts be about that?
I would be open to that. If it reduces the cost of the position, then I would 100% want to talk about that, because I think that's one of the big things that's difficult in the district, is that position is expensive, and if it were part-time, it would reduce the cost of it. So this is the first I've heard of it. Would I be open to it? Absolutely. If the position can be covered with fewer hours, and yes, I'd be open to that.
Anyone else?
I guess I'd want to see how are other districts doing it. Is this a model that already exists somewhere else, and is it successful? I don't fully understand all of the superintendent's roles and what that means as far as making it part-time, what gets taken away. So I guess I'd have to fully understand better what that looks like, and also other districts within our state that we could take a look at.
Anyone else? Shara?
I'm not saying that I'm dead against it, but I feel that the superintendent, if he was part-time principal and superintendent, there's going to be times that he can't be in both places, and I think if he's the superintendent that day and he's over to Augusta fighting for some bill or policy or something like that, and he's needed at the school, then I feel the school's going to get hurt. And I know that there's supposed to be substitute principals and stuff like that, but that's how I feel that it. But I'm willing to look into it. Like you say, I'm not cutting it down completely, but I just feel that somewhere along the line, they're going to get hurt, one or the other.
Danny?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not sure that halftime is the solution, but I'd certainly be open to evaluating the position and trying to compare the costs and stuff with similar districts in the state of Maine, and what their cost structures are, and how much their superintendents cost the district, and maybe a reduction or something is necessary. I'm not sure making it a halftime position is the answer, but certainly evaluating the costs associated with it would definitely be worthwhile.
Anyone else? Any more questions to pass in from the audience? We good? Great. Well, I want to Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming out and all of the candidates for coming out this beautiful night. And also just encourage you, we're all in the same room here. If you want to grab each other and just chat for a few minutes. I appreciate the audience going with this format of written questions rather than taking questions from the audience. And I appreciate the candidates for jumping in with your answers. So thank you. And with that, we can adjourn.
Might be useful to mention tomorrow night.
Oh, yes.
I was going to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, tomorrow night is the public budget meeting, and for those of you who aren't aware, it's their opportunity to weigh in because tomorrow night will be the opportunity to set the budget, and on June 12th, there's a second phase to that called the budget validation referendum, where you would need to go and basically the question is, do you agree with the action taken at the public budget meeting? So tomorrow night's really important. In addition to the regular budget, there's also a few other referendum items about doing some projects within the district using money that's been set aside for that purpose.
So time and place for that meeting?
6:30, Helen C. Berry Auditorium at Telstar. Hope you can make it.
Thank you. Great. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.